What would you do if you brought home a seemingly innocent Hello Kitty doll only to have it unleash a nightmare of terror in your own home? That's exactly what happened to me, and I'm still trying to make sense of it all. It started a few months ago when I was browsing eBay late one night, searching for a birthday gift for my niece. She loved Hello Kitty, so I thought a cute doll would be the perfect present. I stumbled across a listing for a vintage Hello Kitty that looked to be in a great condition, and the price was incredibly low. Something in the back of my mind told me to be cautious, but I pushed that feeling aside, eager to find the ideal gift. I clicked buy now without a second thought. A few days later, a package arrived on my doorstep. I carefully unwrapped the doll, excited to see how it would look. It was absolutely pristine. No rips, no stains, not a single imperfection. I marveled at how the seller was able to keep it in such amazing shape for what they were charging. Little did I know, that doll would soon unleash a nightmare in my home. The first few days after bringing the doll into my house, everything seemed normal. I placed it on a shelf in my living room, and my niece was thrilled when I gave it to her for her birthday. She hugged the doll tightly, giggling with delight. I felt a pang of relief, glad that I had found the perfect gift. But over the next week, strange things began to happen. I would wake up in the middle of the night, feeling an unsettling presence in my room. When I turned on the light, the Hello Kitty doll would be sitting up on my nightstand, its black eyes seemingly staring right at me. I chalked it up to my imagination playing tricks, and told myself I had simply forgotten to put the doll back on the shelf before going to bed. Then the noises started. At first, it was just the occasional creak or thump, which I assumed were normal house sounds. But soon, I began hearing scratching coming from the walls, and the distinct pitter-patter of small feet scurrying across the floors at night. I would get up to investigate, only to find nothing out of the ordinary. My dog started acting incredibly anxious whenever he was near the doll. He would whine and refuse to go into the living room, his tail tucked between his legs. This was highly unusual behavior for the normally calm and friendly pup. I tried to reassure him, but he remained on edge whenever the doll was around. One night, as I was preparing for bed, I heard a loud crash coming from the living room. My heart racing, I rushed to see what had happened. To my horror, I found the Hello Kitty doll lying on the floor, its porcelain head shattered into pieces. Shards of ceramic were scattered everywhere. I had no idea how it could have fallen off the shelf. It had been placed securely, and there had been no sign of a disturbance. Panic set in as I frantically cleaned up the mess, worried that my niece would see the destroyed doll and be heartbroken. As I carefully swept up the remnants, I noticed something strange. Etched into the back of the doll's head were a series of symbols I didn't recognize. They almost looked like some kind of ancient script. Intrigued, I paused to examine them more closely. Before I could make sense of what I was seeing, a sudden gust of wind blew through the room, causing the curtains to flutter violently. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. A bone-chilling sensation of being watched overcame me, and I quickly gathered the pieces of the doll, stuffing them into a trash bag. I spent the rest of the night tossing and turning, unable to shake the uneasy feeling that something was very wrong. The next morning, I decided to get rid of the doll for good. I drove to the dumpster a few blocks away and tossed the bag in, relieved to be rid of the cursed thing. But the nightmares had only just begun. That night, as I lay in bed trying to sleep, I heard a faint scratching sound coming from the hallway. Rubbing my eyes, I sat up and listened more intently. The scratching grew louder, accompanied by the distinct pitter-patter of small feet. My heart pounding, I slowly got out of bed and cautiously made my way to the door, peering out into the dark hall. To my horror, I saw a small figure scurrying across the floor, and it was unmistakably the Hello Kitty doll, its porcelain head reattached and its black eyes gleaming with malice. I blinked in disbelief, convinced I must be dreaming. But as the doll turned to face me, a chill ran down my spine. There was no mistaking those haunting eyes. I slammed the door and pressed my back against it, my breath catching in my throat. What the hell was happening? How was this possible? I stood there, frozen in fear, as the scratching and pitter-pattering grew louder, circling the door. After what felt like an eternity, the sounds finally faded away, replaced by an eerie silence. Summoning my courage, I carefully opened the door and peered out. The hall was empty. I quickly shut and locked the door, my hands shaking. I had to get out of this house, away from that doll, and whatever dark forces it had unleashed. I threw on some clothes and grabbed my car keys, ready to make a hasty exit. But as I reached for the front door, I heard a sinister giggle coming from the living room. Stealing my nerves, I inched towards the doorway, dreading what I might find. There, sitting on the couch, was the Hello Kitty doll, its head reattached and a twisted grin on its face. I let out a terrified scream, stumbling backwards. The doll let out another chilling laugh, its black eyes boring into mine. I turned and fled, rushing out the door and into my car. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind racing. What the hell was going on? How was that doll moving and speaking on its own? Was I going insane? I desperately tried to make sense of it all, but nothing added up. Finally, exhausted, I pulled into a motel, hoping to get some rest and figure out my next move. As I lay in the dark motel room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced around nervously, half expecting to see the doll lurking in the corner. I must have dozed off at some point, because I woke with a start to the sound of scratching coming from the bathroom. Heart pounding, I slowly got up and cautiously approached the door, my hand trembling as I turned the knob. I let out a terrified scream as the doll came barreling out, its sharp porcelain claws swiping at me. I stumbled backwards, nearly tripping over the edge of the bed. The doll let out a menacing laugh, its black eyes glinting with malice. "You can't get away from me," it hissed. "I'm going to make your life a living hell." I bolted out the door, running blindly down the motel hallway. I had to get away from that thing. It was pure evil, and I had no idea what it was capable of. I burst out the front doors and jumped into my car, peeling out of the parking lot. As I drove, I glanced frantically in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the doll chasing after me. I drove for hours, stopping only for gas and to grab a quick bite to eat. But no matter where I went, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. The doll's haunting laughter seemed to echo my mind, taunting me. I was exhausted, both physically and mentally, but I couldn't risk stopping for the night, not with that thing out there.